into Play Like a Jet Live with Luke and Clay, but you might have noticed we're looking a little different this week. So we're very excited to announce that we've partnered with uSTADIUM. Nick and the guys, we have got Splash behind the cameras working as the producer on the show. Really exciting to be taking Play Like a Jet Live to the next level. It's been a big week for Jets fans. Clay, how are you going, man?
I'm doing great, and obviously, as you mentioned, we're teaming up with uSTADIUM. They're a great team. I'm glad to be partnered with them. And obviously, as you mentioned, we had a busy week starting on Monday. So how about we just get straight into it?
Let's dive straight into the biggest news that broke the other day, which was the Sam Darnold trade. So it's been coming for a few weeks. People have known that the Jets were moving in a direction to draft a quarterback at number 2. And news broke that the Jets were trading with the Carolina Panthers. And the return was good. They got a 2021 sixth-round pick and a second and a fourth in 2022, which was something we alluded to on the pod last week. We discussed maybe the 2022 assets being a way the Jets could maximize value. Clay, how did you feel about the return? Was it kind of what you expected? How do you think Joe Douglas did in that trade?
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it last week, how it was a possibility that they traded for a future second-round pick. And obviously, that's what they ended up getting. I think it's good value. Obviously, we all thought that the value was going to go down the further it went along. But obviously ended up showing that it didn't. And we got a second-round pick in 2022, a fourth-rounder in 2022, and then I believe the very last sixth-round pick in this draft. So, I mean, I'm happy with it. I think Joe Douglas did a good job. It gives us – and we also mentioned last week, we're building for the future. We're not building for 2021. So I don't think that it was necessary that they had to get a second-round pick this year or a third-round pick this year or whatever. Like, I think it's good. We still have some ammo next year. Say a big receiver hits the market next year and we want to make a trade. We have that ammunition down the road to make a big move if they want to. It doesn't have to be just rookies. So I'm happy with the compensation. A 2, 4, and a 6. It's just about what I always thought. I was thinking maybe a 2 and a 5 at the end of the day, but I'll take it. I'm happy.
Yeah, I know that Over the Cap and the guys over there said that the value of the 6th, 2nd, and 4th pretty much came to about the pick 16 in the first round of the draft. So that's kind of the totality of the value that Joe Douglas and the Jets front office got for Sam Darnold. And now we look to the next 2 years, and the Jets have 21 picks in 2021 and 2022 combined. 21 picks, and 10 of those are on day 1 and 2. The ammo is there. They're ready to launch an attack behind a rookie quarterback, and it's super exciting. So something I touched on, Clay, on Twitter about 24 hours ago, or before the trade, I should say, is that I didn't want Sam Darnold in the building when Zach Wilson or Justin Fields or whoever it is drafted. Just because of the media storm. It's not that I don't think Zach Wilson can't handle the QB competition. It's not that I think Sam Darnold wouldn't accept his role as a backup. I just thought it was going to be cleaner. You don't need your rookie quarterback and the entire locker room dealing with questions about a QB controversy, who's starting, and all those kind of things. Do you think that was a factor that weighed into the decision to trade Sam when they did? Or do you think it was more just about maximizing his value and this was the best time to trade Sam?
I don't know if that was an issue. I know people were starting to bring it up on like the big platforms. I really don't think it was a possibility that they drafted Wilson or Fields or whoever and kept Darnold on the team past April 30th. Because the draft starts on April 29th. There's no way they were keeping him past April 30th. I just don't buy it. You're bringing in you pretty much have a new GM with Joe Douglas. This is now officially his team. You have Robert Saleh and a new coaching staff. And now you're bringing in a rookie quarterback. Why start off their careers in New York with a controversy? That's not the right way to build things. You're asking for a disaster, especially in New York. Like, we know how New York media can get, especially me. Like, I grew up in New York media. So it's just like there's no need to do that. I'm happy that they got it done now, especially from a fan's perspective. Like, now we don't have to wait these next 3.5 weeks, 3 weeks, be like, oh my God, are they going to trade him? Are they going to keep him? What are they going to do? Blah, 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 blah. Like, no, it's done. Like, quarterback is number 2. We don't have to worry about it anymore. And I think it's a load off their shoulders too. They don't have to deal with the trade offers anymore. They can kind of more so focus on the draft itself and not have to worry about, all right, what can we get with Sam? We have to call these other teams. And no, he's out of the picture. They wish him good luck. I wish him good luck. But now we can just focus on the draft and building this team for our next young quarterback.
Yeah, definitely. And just a quick question for you, Clay. Would you have preferred, let's play a little role play here. The Jets could have got pick number 39 from Carolina this year, or the compensation they got with the 6th this year, the 2nd and the 4th in 2022. I understand that assets kind of depreciate as they're kicked down the road, but which package would you have preferred? Just straight 39 or what the Jets ended up getting?
That's a good question. I think I would have preferred 39 just because, and there is value at 39. There are good players in this draft, especially on the offensive line. There are a lot of offensive linemen that could go in that 30, 40, 50 range that I think would be valuable there. But even if they got that pick and they didn't like the value, you could trade it back and maybe go from 39 to 50 and get a 4th round pick in return. And it's just but like that 2nd round pick is this year instead of next year. So I think I would have stuck with 39 if that was a possibility, but it doesn't seem like that was the case.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You're listening to Play Like a Jet Live, brought to you by uSTADIUM, and we're breaking down the Sam Darnold trade that happened earlier this week. Let's pivot slightly and take a look at it from the Carolina Panthers perspective and that of Sam Darnold. So obviously the 3 years here in New York, they didn't pan out how he would have liked. We discussed last week that some of that fell on Mike McCagnon, some of it on Adam Gase, that there were some issues in the building and in the organization that led to him failing and consequently being traded to the Carolina Panthers. Do you think Sam has a real opportunity to be successful in Carolina with the weapons like DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey, reuniting with Robbie Anderson, Matt Rule, the one that got away in 2019? Do you think he has a shot to really resurrect his career and become the guy that people thought he would be coming into the 2018 draft? What do you think his kind of ceiling is with Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that he succeeds more so in Carolina than he ever did in New York. He's going to a much better situation. I mean, if we can go back these last 3 years and go through the weapons and the offensive linemen he's been around, and not to mention the coaching staff. I mean, he's going with Matt Rule, who most Jet fans wanted. I know he was my number one choice, that coaching cycle. They have Joe Brady, who some say turned around Joe Burrow's career, made him he had the best collegiate season pretty much ever. He became the first overall pick out of nowhere, and he's a potential franchise quarterback. So I think just the coaching staff alone gives him a much better situation. And then you get into the players that you mentioned. You got Christian McCaffrey, arguably the best running back in the league. You got Robbie Anderson, who he has a connection with from New York, and we know Robbie does like him. Yeah, DJ Moore, who's been a 1,000-yard receiver, and he's a player that I really like. They got some offensive line pieces, Matt Paradis, Taylor Moton, who they franchise tagged. And the thing is, now they get to keep number 8 and 39. You can use those two picks on offensive linemen, or an offensive lineman and tight end, or another receiver, whatever you want. You can build around Darnold and give him the offense that he legitimately never had in New York or USC. And I don't know if he'll ever reach that potential that I saw him having coming out of 2018. I saw him having that top 5 potential. I don't know if he ever reaches that, but if he can get into that top 10, top 12 range, I mean, that's the Panthers and their fans are going to look back on this and be like, we got this kid for a 2nd round pick. Like who gives? Obviously, we're not cursing, but like it doesn't matter what they give up at that point if he gets to that standard, and I think he can get to that. And obviously, if he does, Joe Brady's not going to stick around for very long.
Yeah, exactly right. You touched on Robbie Anderson a little bit. Obviously, they had a connection and some nice deep balls against Denver in 2018. A couple of throws against the Cowboys in 2019 come to mind. I'm a little interested to see that dynamic. When Robbie left the Jets, I remember a tweet that he sent out where someone had put together a video package of all the times he was overthrown on deep balls. Yes. And he had a little shush emoji. I'm a little intrigued. I know they had a pretty good relationship, but he seemed pretty happy to get away from Sam Darnold to some extent. Maybe I read too much into that tweet, but I think that will be an interesting dynamic. Obviously, the deep throw hasn't been Sam's forte either at SC or with the Jets. So I'm intrigued to see how that will play out. Obviously, Robbie had a slightly different role in Joe Brady's offense than with Adam Gase and even in 2018. But speaking of Joe Brady, what do you think of Darnold in that offense and with that fit. I know Chris Sims came out earlier in the week and said how good a fit it was, and Sam Darnold's feet in the pocket are terrific, and he's an accurate intermediate thrower. How much truth do you think there is to that, and how do you think he'll fit in that Brady offense with a lot of mesh and intermediate throws?
I do think it is a good fit. I want to take a step back from what Chris Sims said. He does not have terrific feet. He has active feet, and his footwork was arguably his biggest issue. Granted, he can make crazy throws with bad feet, but that doesn't mean he has good feet. So I just wanted to get that out there. But I think it is a good fit in the offense. He can be accurate. I think a lot of it with New York was just in his head, especially after that New England game in 2019, like where he was seeing ghosts. I think he got in his head and he started just missing throws that he would normally make. Like we know he can do it. We know he can. We saw it at USC. We saw his rookie year, and we saw it in glimpses in 2019 as well. I think it started getting in his head. New York media obviously never helps. And as 2020 was going on, you hear the fan base chanting for, obviously not in the stadium, but they're chanting for Trevor Lawrence. They want you to lose. They want you to be terrible so they can get the quarterback of the future. So I think it was just him getting in his head, and I think going to Joe Brady in that mesh concept system, he's going to have playmakers, obviously. And we saw Robbie Anderson transform into a new player in that mesh concept system. Yeah. And we never thought of him as that. We thought of him as a deep threat, a deep guy that can go on flies, posts, and all that. So I do think it's going to be a good spot for him, especially having a run game with Christian McCaffrey. It's going to take a huge load off his shoulders.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about the fit. PFF talked about Sam Darnold as the worst pocket passer from a clean pocket last year. But I think a lot of that has to do with the pressure that he faced. It's easy to say, look, he was bad in a clean pocket. He's bad when the situation is actually very good. But a lot of that is a residual effect and a flow-on effect. When things are messy, you come to expect it. And even when there's clean pressure, you do perceive that there are ghosts, as you touched on in 2019. So I think that's a big part of it. With the Carolinas, I find it interesting they picked up the fifth-year option. So that's $18 million they've guaranteed, fully guaranteed to Sam Darnold in 2022. Do you think they're viewing Sam as the long-term future at quarterback, or is he just another option as they look to move on from Teddy Bridgewater and that big contract?
I can see it being both ways. I don't think taking that fifth year I don't think it locks them into anything. Because it's not like it's a crazy expensive contract. It's 15.7, I believe. Maybe there's something around there for that fifth year. That's not a crazy number. You could still build around this team with these next two drafts and next free agency. So they're going to do everything they can to make him work. I'm sure they want him. You don't make this trade unless you want him to be the future of the franchise. So I think they're going to do whatever it takes. But they're definitely they're not locking themselves into it. A second round pick does not mean like, oh, we're stuck with this guy for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Like, no, if he's not good after this year, they can draft someone in the first round next year. I mean, we saw this same exact organization draft Jimmy Clausen, and then the very next year draft Cam Newton. Like we saw it happen before, and it can definitely happen again.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I kind of feel sorry for Panthers fans, not because I don't think Sam Darnold had an opportunity to be good, but if you said to them at the start of the offseason, these are the quarterbacks that are on the market, but you're going to end up with Sam Darnold, I think they would have been disappointed. But right now, if you look at the Panthers fan base, they are stoked. You think they're getting Deshaun Watson. They've gone from Deshaun Watson to Russell Wilson to Matthew Stafford to Wilson or Fields to Sam Darnold, and it's almost just like they had to come to accept it, and they're pretty excited about it. We'll see how it works out. I certainly wish Sam the best. A great guy who handled the New York media terrifically well. Thought he was a good prospect that just didn't get a fair shot here in New York. Hope he doesn't do too well in 2021, obviously with the Jets getting the compensation next year. Hopefully we beat him when we go down to Carolina later in the year.
I want to stick with that. And I put this tweet out there earlier today. I don't know if you saw it, but what do you think would be the bigger headline for week 1 for the Jets? Facing Sam Darnold in Carolina or going against Trevor Lawrence at home?
I think it's Trevor Lawrence. I think It's a tough one. That's a really good question, Clay. I think just the number 1 versus number 2 picks in the draft, Jets fans pining over Trevor Lawrence for 6 months and then doing a complete 180 and falling in love with Zach Wilson or Justin Fields. I think that is too good to pass up on if you're the NFL and they're kind of tweaking with the schedule there. But in saying that, I mean, Sam Darnold at home in Carolina, New York, and Zach Wilson coming down. I think that would be a marquee matchup for Jets fans and Carolina fans. But I probably just lean towards the Jags. What about you? How do you kind of see those?
I struggle with it because obviously so many people wanted Sam out of here. And people that didn't want Sam out of here were kind of just like, it wasn't about Sam, it was more so building the roster.
Yeah.
But I think I agree with you. I think I agree. The 1 versus 2, and not how it's just 1 versus 2, but like how the Jets were 0-13. Yeah, 0-13. Yeah. We're three games away from getting Trevor Lawrence, the guy that everyone wanted, and then it just faltered. But now everyone's kind of turned a 180, like you said, and now we're all in on Justin Fields or Zach Wilson, and I think that'd just be huge for Week 1. I'm excited. I hope it's one of those 2 games for Week 1 instead of the Buffalo Bills that we play every year Week 1.
Every single year. Yeah. So, Clay, we have touched on the trade from obviously the compensation standpoint, how the Carolina are feeling about the trade and Sam Darnold. But let's now discuss what it means for the Jets in the draft, which is coming up on the 29th of April and the 2 days following that. So there's 2 ways I think the Jets can build around Zach Wilson. The first thing is they need to go offense heavy. So even if, maybe Ojulari's on board at 23 and they love him, if Tevin Jenkins is there, you got to take him because you need to build as much offensive talent around Zach Wilson as possible. He's your most expensive and most important asset, assuming it is Zach Wilson. And you need to make sure he does everything in his power and you do everything in your power to have him succeed and not fall in that Darnold cycle. So that's one way of looking at the draft. It's probably a little single-sided and maybe not ideal. The other way is taking best player available at premium positions. So we talk about corner, edge, quarterback, offensive line, and wide receiver, and really not letting Zach Wilson factor into how you're going to draft. Do you think it's a combination of those 2? Are you leaning one way or the other? How do you kind of see the Jets draft strategy coming into April?
Looking at Joe Douglas and where he's come from, where he learned under was Ozzie Newsome in Baltimore. And what they did was best player available. And I don't see that changing. I think if it's a tie, or maybe if it's just say it's between Greg Newsome and Tevin Jenkins, and he has Greg Newsome slightly ahead of Tevin Jenkins, he might go with Tevin Jenkins just because, all right, we need to build the offensive line for Zach or Justin, whoever. We need to do it. So I think that could happen, but I think ultimately he'll go with best player available early on, just because the team does need a lot of holes filled. I mean, we still don't have a starting cornerback group. We don't know who's playing out opposite Bryce Hall. We still need another linebacker. I know we have a lot of players at the defensive end position, but do they want Vinny Curry to be that starting guy, or Jabari Zuniga, or do they want to get that first round specialist? So I don't think it has to be just offense. I think, though, they have to go offense at either 23 or 34. You can't go defense at both.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that if it's a tiebreaker and you have those clusters of players that are similarly graded, that's when you lean towards offense and Zach Wilson. That can be your tiebreaker. But I discussed this a lot ad nauseum almost 2 years ago when the Jets drafted Quinnen Williams at number 3. People just kept saying, no, we can't take an interior defensive lineman. We have to take offensive talent. We have to build around Sam Darnold. And I know myself and Scott were kind of arguing the whole of Jets Twitter, saying that this is a holistic approach to building a roster. And even though he plays on the interior, pass rusher is obviously a premium position. And when you can get those blue chippers, they're more important than just getting offense for the sake of getting offense. So I tend to agree with you there. So then leading from that, Clay, let's talk about a little mini big board of guys we think the Jets should target at pick number 23. So we've talked about taking positions of value, which are offensive line, edge, corner, wide receiver. Obviously, quarterback will have already be addressed at number 2. Let's run through the 3 players you think the Jets should target first and foremost at number 23, should they be on the board. And the first guy who I know you're in love with is Vera Tucker, the tackle/guard out of USC.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to beat a dead horse with Vera Tucker. I mean, I can talk about him every single week until he is a Jet. I'm going to speak it into existence. But no, I mean, he's just a very good player. I know he's coming from USC, where we don't have a lot of great memories right now, but I do love the versatility. He played left tackle. He played guard. He played guard most recently. He played tackle in 2020. He played guard before that. But even at left tackle, and he was more than athletic to do it at the Pac-12 level. And obviously, you're not going against the greatest defensive competition, but I thought he was quick enough. He has great hands. He has excellent balance, core strength. And one thing I like he has a finisher mentality too. He's not afraid to just throw guys into the dirt. He's got that type of mentality. The arm length, I believe it's 32 inches, 32 3/8 inches, I believe. So it's slightly below the threshold for a tackle, but I don't see him as a tackle anyway. I see him as an interior lineman. And if you can line him up next to Mekhi Becton, you're setting up that left side of the offensive line for Zach Wilson. I'm just keep saying Wilson because I'm almost positive. If you can set up that left side of the offensive line for Zach Wilson, that's something you don't have to worry about for an extended period of time. I mean, look what happened in 2006. We drafted Nick Mangold and DeBrickashaw Ferguson, 2 positions we did not have to worry about for a decade, which is incredible to do. So, and I think you can get that with Elijah Vera Tucker. He's that. And I mentioned it yesterday as we had our little meeting. I see him as a Zach Martin type prospect. Maybe not that player in the NFL player, because Zach Martin, I'm not going to get misconstrued. He is a Hall of Fame player. I'm not saying Elijah Vera Tucker is a Hall of Fame player, but as a prospect, purely as a prospect, I do see the similarities, and I think he can make an immediate impact at the left guard position right away.
Yeah, and as you can see on the screen there, Splash just put it up, 3 QB hits allowed in his career for Elijah Vera Tucker, a guy who's had great success. People kind of knock the Pac-12. I think there's some okay pass rushes there. He had some really good reps against Oregon this year, and he's a really exciting player. I'm not sure if he will slip to the Jets. Maybe if teams see him as a guard because of that lack of positional value, so to speak, he may slip. So let's now move to your number 2 guy, Clay, and let's stay up front. And we're talking about Tevin Jenkins, who played tackle, obviously. Do you see him as a guy who could kick inside and then move out to tackle after the Jets are finished with George Fant? How do you kind of see his career if the Jets were to take him at pick number 23?
I do see that as a possibility. They might even – if I'm not mistaken, I believe George Fant's contract just got guaranteed.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going anywhere in 2021. So I do think that's a possibility where he starts off at left or right guard, wherever they see him better fit. Or maybe they just have him ride the bench for a little while. I don't know. But I really like Tevin Jenkins. I think he'll ultimately, if they were to draft him, I think he would ultimately be the right tackle of the future. I don't care if he has a little bit of shorter arms. Yeah. But he's also another guy that has experience playing both the left and right side. He moved a little better than I expected. I didn't see it with his body type that he would be such a good mover for him. But he actually was. And I mean, I fell in love with his tape after I saw what he did to Joseph Asai.
Yeah.
I was an absolute non-factor throughout the entire game. And there was 2 clips, I believe, back-to-back plays. Splash can maybe find it on my Twitter. And he just manhandled Asai, threw him to the ground, and just Asai's he could potentially sneak into the first round. He's a good prospect, and he bullied him. Granted, I know there's one play that people might bring up with Tevin Jenkins where he's got thrown to the ground. Here's the play. He's just bringing Asai all the way out of bounds, off the screen. Yep. Off the screen. Look, just look at it. Sorry, I can go more, but I just want to watch this play one more time. He's taking Asai on a bus ride all the way to Texas, because they're in Oklahoma, going to Texas. That's when I fell in love with him, watching this game. And if they're able to get him at 23 and have him be we can have our bookends locked up. I know offensive line isn't exciting, but those two would be the most exciting picks for me in 23.
Yeah, I completely agree. You talked about Vera Tucker having that finisher mentality. Man, Jenkins has that in spades. I loved his tape. I think he's a really exciting prospect and a guy that can play right tackle for the Jets for a long time and really get those bookends in order for Zach Wilson. I know you had some trouble deciding on the third guy on your list. There's obviously a lot of talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that the Jets could look to take at pick number 23. Where did you kind of land with your last guy the Jets should target with that pick?
Yeah, so I was going through a few names. We got some edge rushers, Ojulari, Phillips. There's a couple other offensive linemen, Creed Humphrey, Landon Dickerson. I didn't really see a receiver at 23 that I thought would be a good fit for the offense. I ended up going with Greg Newsome. He keeps climbing up boards every single week. And at this point, I think he can definitely fit into that. I think he can go as high as 20 to Chicago. I'm actually looking at his profile now. He's actually from Chicago, which would actually be pretty cool. But he's listed at 6 foot, 192 pounds. He's got over 31-inch arms. He ran a 4.3940 at the Northwestern Pro Day. Sure, it's a pro day, so even if you want to call it a 4.45, that's still a really good time for a kid his size. The thing that would worry me is the lack of playing time. I shouldn't say playing time. He was injured. It wasn't like he was benched or he couldn't get on the field. He was injured. So that would be the one thing that worries me. But you can see here, let me bring this up a little bit. Yeah. Let's see, 123 Power 5 cornerbacks saw 30-plus targets. Newsome was the only one not to allow over 100 yards. That's impressive, man. And he's going to get some good quarterbacks and some good offenses in the Big Ten as well. And obviously, we saw what Northwestern did to Justin Fields in Ohio State. They're one of the top defenses in the country for a reason, and he was part of it. I love what he can bring to the defense. Obviously, the Jets need cornerbacks, so it's a position of need. It's a premium position. And obviously, we see Michael Nadia. He's always got some amazing stats for Jets X Factor. So I think he would be my third choice that are realistic options at 23.
Okay, that's pretty good. I don't think you can go wrong with either of those or all three of those guys. I'm going to work from 3 to 1, primarily because Tevin Jenkins was my number 3, so don't want to kind of double dip on him. Obviously, we both think that he's a really good fit for the Jets. Have you still got me?
This figured out? No.
Let me see what we got here. Sorry, excuse us while we work through a little bit of a technical difficulty. Have you got me again, Clay? Okay, so the guy I talked about was Jalen Phillips. So Jalen Phillips obviously dealt with some injuries, the concussions, and that was a huge issue for him when he was at UCLA and then obviously transferring to Miami. But with the Jets having 2 different picks in the first round of the draft.
Phillips, I think he's a really good player too. And he'll be a top, I think I'll have him as my number 2 edge rusher in the class. The things that worry me about him are the injuries. And he medically retired in 2018. So that could be an issue. Obviously we have the medicals coming up this week. I think starting tomorrow, they'll have them. So I could be wrong, but I'm pretty positive it's starting this weekend. So the injuries are going to be a big concern with him, and he can be a guy that could go as high as 14 to Minnesota, or he can be a guy that falls all the way to the 3rd, 4th rounds because they're not sure about his ankles, his concussion history, and I believe he had a wrist injury as well. So, you just never know. I believe he was healthy in 2020. So if the team is fine with his medicals, I think he's going to be an incredible player. He has so much upside. He was the number 1 recruit coming out of high school for a reason. So I really do like him. I wouldn't be upset with him at 23 or 34 at all.
Okay, so that leads to my number 1 player for the Jets at number 23. And this is a guy who wasn't an option just a couple of days ago, a week ago even. And that's Caleb Farley, the cornerback, who's dealing with some back injuries. So obviously it's very risky. And we just touched on Jalen Phillips. Obviously I'm feeling like rolling the dice. But I think that he's a terrific fit here. He's a lengthy man corner who can play in that cover 3 scheme that we're going to see Salah run in New York. I'm a little worried about the back injuries. I'm not sure how far he's going to slip. But Clay, how do you feel about Farley, and would you take him at number 23?
I don't think I would. It's just back injuries scare me, man. I mean, from personal experience, I had a strained muscle in my back, and that was the worst pain of my life. So I'm like, I don't know if I had to deal with that. Granted, these are like superhumans and not some, I think it was 16 years old at the time, and not some 16-year-old punk like that had like a small back injury. But and they honestly though they do scare me, and it's a position that's gonna take a toll on you a little bit. I mean, he's gonna be moving around a lot, and I just don't know if it holds up over a long period. I mean, obviously, I'm no doctor, so I couldn't tell you if it's gonna have long-term repercussions. So, just as me, who has no medical experience whatsoever, I wouldn't. But if the doctors are okay with it, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. There's a large amount of risk there. I think what plays into it for me is that the Jets don't need to rush him on the field with the fact that they're not really competing in 2021 and that window's a little further down the road. So what we want to jump in now is to the quarterback class. Obviously, with Sam Darnold being traded, we're now looking at number 2. And we're going to have a look at the fits for the quarterbacks and where we see them landing. Obviously, we don't want to spend too much time on Trevor Lawrence. We're still a little bitten by the fact that we didn't get him and beat the Rams in Cleveland in 2020. So let's look at number 2, and the consensus is Zach Wilson. So he's the guy that 99% of the world think the Jets are going to take at number 2, and he's a guy that I absolutely love. I said at the end of December that I think Zach Wilson is closer to Trevor Lawrence and QB1 than he is to QB3 and Justin Fields. He is a guy that can excel outside the pocket, and I think that he's got a chance to be really special in New York. So I guess, do you think Zach Wilson is the player the Jets should draft? I know you've been watching some film. How do you feel about Zach Wilson?
Sorry, guys, we're going through some technical difficulties, so we're trying to figure something out right now. I believe we're going to take a caller. Luke's going to take a caller, and I'm going to hop off and try to get right back on so I can actually hear what Luke's saying.
All right, let's do that. Excuse Clay while he ducks out for a moment. We're on Play Like a Jet Live, brought to you by uSTADIUM. We're going to try and bring in a caller, so just bear with us as we're talking Zach Wilson and who the Jets should take at number 2 in the NFL draft. So let me just communicate with Splash, our producer. We'll try and get that caller lined up. So Zach Wilson, BYU quarterback. We think he's the best fit to go number 2 with the Jets. What Clay and I were going to discuss next was where we thought the other quarterbacks would land and the best landing spots, and then touch on a little bit of how they play. And we really had a big debate about San Francisco, obviously trading up to number 3. Both Clay and I, we can't believe that San Francisco would trade up to number 3 in the draft, give away 2 future first-round picks to draft Mac Jones. Just from a physical tools perspective, he isn't that guy that you're going to give away 2 first-round picks and roll the dice for that limited upside, or a more limited upside. So we kind of decided that Trey Lance was the guy that San Francisco were going to take, not Justin Fields or Mac Jones. So we went in that direction. And Lance is a good prospect, but man, he's raw. He only had something like 380 dropbacks in college. Obviously only saw 1 game in 2020. Limited exposure, but the tools are off the charts. Kyle Shanahan has an opportunity to bring in a player with a running game that he hasn't had since RG3 in Washington in his rookie year. He's had a lot of limited ceiling guys like Jimmy Garoppolo and even Matt Ryan to a certain extent, although Matt Ryan is obviously a terrific quarterback in his own right. So we think that Trey Lance would be an excellent fit. in San Francisco, and that they might shoot for the moon and really attempt to take him at number 3. And then it was a bit of a waiting game. I can't see Atlanta really finding a trade partner right now unless Denver want to come up from 9. So we saw the next guy, which was Justin Fields, slip to Detroit in number 7 overall. Obviously, Detroit just acquired Jared Goff and his rather large contract. But one thing I will say is that they shouldn't be out of the market. They're not trying to compete kind of like the Jets, but to a lesser extent. They're not trying to compete in 2021, nor really 2022. Dan Campbell has come in on a 6-year contract. He has time on his side. They're going to give Detroit a chance to rebuild. And taking Justin Fields, maybe let him sit for a year behind Jared Goff, a little like they did in Kansas City with Mahomes, probably is a really good fit. Justin Fields is obviously a prospect who has polarized Twitter, Jets Twitter, and the draft community in general. He's probably been very harshly critiqued. He's an excellent player. When my big board comes out next week, you're going to see him probably play on number 6 or 7. So he's right up there in the upper echelon of talent in this class. And I think he has an opportunity to be fantastic. What I will say is there are some processing issues. And part of that is because of the way that the OSU offense was run and the option routes, and they made him hold the football a little longer than he probably would have liked. But also he's a guy who likes to see people open and get double confirmation, especially over the middle. You want to see him open, take a second look, and then throw the football. He held the ball longer than any other quarterback versus the blitz in college football. He held it longer than he did against a 3 or 4-man rush. So that's a little problem for me. But I think that Justin Fields, if he fell to number 7 in Detroit, I think they'd have to grab him even after making the trade for Jared Goff. And that leaves us with one other guy kind of in that top 5 quarterbacks. And it's not Clay's guy. Here he is. I can see him again. Clay is back.
I can hear you.
Excellent. Clay, I've just broken down Trey Lance and Justin Fields and their fits. We're talking about QB5 now. And unfortunately for you and the Florida Gators, that is not Kyle Trask. I'm sorry to say it.
Yeah.
It's actually Mac Jones from Alabama. And we saw him going to New England in a bit of a trade up. So the possibility of them trading up, we said to 9 with Denver, if they don't think he's a real upgrade over Drew Lock. Talk to me a little bit about that fit and why you think Mac Jones would be a good player in New England.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as we know, New England had a pretty good pocket passer for a really long time. So I think they might be a little more comfortable with a guy like that. But no, I mean, the thing with Mac Jones and a reason why he's being mocked, I shouldn't even say mocked, but most people are saying he's going number 3 to San Francisco. The reason for that is because he has a very high IQ and knows how to run an offense, and he knows the X's and O's, and he can work with Shanahan's complicated system right away. I think that's a big reason, and not a reason that many people talk about. You see the athleticism of these guys. You see the big arms. You see the 40, 50-yard runs. Like you see all of that, but you don't see what's in here, and you really don't have a chance to see it. And something you might get a glimpse of it here and there, but these coaches get to hear it and see it when they're behind the scenes on the whiteboard and film study. And I think that's a big reason why Mac Jones could go number 3, and the other reason why Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels would love to have him on their team. I know there was that video at the pro day where Belichick was like shaking his head after a missed throw. I'm not going to read too much into that. I don't know if he was shaking his head at the throw itself, but I do think it'd be a good fit. I think, and we saw how inept the offense was in New England last year, and not sure it could be because Cam Newton's a shell of himself, but it could also be because that's not the type of offense that they want to run. So I think Mac Jones would be a good fit in New England, and the guy that could start right away. I don't know if he'll be a great player in 2021, but someone that I think could at least give Belichick something to look forward to.
Yeah, I completely agree. So just to do a bit of a recap there, as we had some technical difficulties and Clay was away for a moment, we talked about Trevor Lawrence to Jacksonville. We think that's pretty much in concrete. Yeah. Zach Wilson to the Jets. We then had Trey Lance going number 3 overall to San Francisco. Justin Fields dropping to 7, and then Mac Jones coming to 9, and New England trading up for him. Let's circle back to Zach Wilson, because this is a Jets show, and he's the guy that has captured the attention of Jets Twitter and Jets fans across the world. What did you make of Joe Douglas's presser yesterday afternoon, where he touched on Steve Young's comments? So if you haven't heard, Steve Young came out a couple of days ago and said the Jets are courting Zach Wilson. They're talking to his family, and they're preparing to make him the number 2 pick. Joe Douglas came out and, with a wry smile, something I wrote about today on playlikeajet.com, said that Steve Young is very plugged in at BYU and he has very good sources, and that they have met Zach Wilson's family and it's part of the pro day process. How did you feel about that? Would you read too much into what Joe Douglas said in his presser yesterday?
I mean, yeah. I mean, how could you not? I mean, there's no way that Trevor Lawrence is not the number 1 pick. And if he isn't the number 1 pick, Zach Wilson's most likely the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we know that quarterback is going to be the pick at number 2. And Joe's not afraid to show his hand. He's not going to blatantly say, like, yeah, we're taking Zach Wilson, or yeah, we're taking Trevor Lawrence, or yeah, we're taking Justin Fields. That's not how you go about things in the NFL. So we're not going to see that, but he's all but confirming that Zach Wilson is their guy. And also, he's also got to save face a little bit, because, I mean, what if there is something wrong in his medicals? I mean, that is still a possibility. I don't think it's a big one, but it is a small possibility that there's something wrong with that torn labrum that he had, and they maybe we do go with Justin Fields. So I think he's pretty much assuring that it will be Justin Fields. It will be Zach Wilson if everything clears medically wise, and it's nice. It's a breath of fresh air. We don't have to sit here and worry, because I remember all throughout 2018, I'm sure you were the same way. I don't know who your preference was in 18, but I remember just sitting there and like, oh man, is it going to be Baker? Is it going to be Sam? Is it going to be one of the Joshes? Like, I have no idea. And like, I didn't want Josh Allen. Obviously, I'm looking like an idiot now, but I really didn't want him. So I was like so worried that they were going to take him. And now we kind of know, like, all right, we don't have to worry about it. Like, I would put it at 90% chance that Zach Wilson at 2, 90%, which is obviously a very high percentage when you're getting this close to the draft.
Yeah, I think back in 2018, I remember distinctly Matt Miller coming out with a report, and Matt Miller was really plugged into the Jets front office at the time. He was doing some media stuff for them, and obviously had a pretty good relationship with Mike McCagnon. And he came out and said Josh Allen's going to be the guy at number 3. And I was panicking for a week. Obviously, Josh Allen had a terrific 2020 season and is trending upwards and looks like he's going to work out in the NFL. But he wasn't the guy I wanted either. So there's a lot more comfort this year, as you said, in knowing that Joe Douglas is kind of dropping some hints that Zach Wilson looks like he'll be the guy.
Yeah.
I already touched a little bit on the pros and cons of Zach Wilson's game, how good he is outside of the pocket, his awareness and ability to shift within a muddy pocket. So I wanted to give a bit of a player comparison. And I said this literally from the first game I watched, which I think might have been the Houston game this year, or if not, it might have been against Troy. And Zach Wilson reminds me inside the pocket of Baker Mayfield and the way he played at OU, just the way he shifts and maneuvers within the pocket and outside of it. And I'm using this as a player comparison stylistically, not from a level of talent.
I know.
He looks like Aaron Rodgers outside the pocket. Like his release, his ability to throw off different platforms. Like, I'm not sure how you can watch Zach Wilson play out of structure and not see number 12 in Green Bay. Again, not saying he's going to turn into Aaron Rodgers, not saying he's the quality of prospect Rodgers was coming out of Cal, even though he had that funky high release. But I just think Baker Mayfield inside the pocket, Aaron Rodgers outside it. Do you kind of see similar things? I know you watched a lot of Zach Wilson over the last couple of nights and you're diving back into that film. How did you kind of, leave feeling after you watched those games again?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I don't think I watched the first 3 games of the season when I first watched his film, but now diving back into it, it's great to see, knowing that he's going to be the quarterback. You nailed it. I do see a lot of Baker Mayfield in him, and obviously the big comparisons he gets is Rodgers and Mahomes for his off-platform throws, his different arm angles. And he's getting the nickname Mormon Mahomes. I mean, if that doesn't that doesn't spell it out for you, I don't know it will. But he has that kind of play style. And no, I don't think he'll be the greatest quarterback we've ever seen within the first 3 years like Pat Mahomes was. And I don't think he'll be arguably the greatest quarterback of all time like Aaron Rodgers is. So I don't know if he'll reach that, but the play style itself is exciting. I don't think there's any denying that, and you could see it in this game. I think, and what I came away with, con wise for Wilson, because he's not a perfect prospect. I don't want to seem like make it seem like we are like pro Zach Wilson for everything. Like he does no bad. There are some cons, like the body type that obviously is not great. I mean, he's a little skinny, but I think I think his body type could pack on a few more pounds of muscle. And I don't think it'll be a huge issue down the road, but right now it is. The injury history, as we alluded to earlier, the poor competition, and BYU didn't have a great schedule in 2020. And outside of Coastal Carolina, I don't really know if there's another ranked team on their schedule.
Boise State was ranked at the time they played.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that one.
Yeah.
And there's only one season of round one tape. I know in 2019 he was rehabbing from prior injuries, so I'm not gonna give him too much fault for a poor 2019. 2018 he was a true freshman, and he wasn't playing on a great team at BYU. So to play as well as he did as a true freshman is nice to see. I'm trying to get tape of that so I can go back and see how he's progressed over the last few years. But I do really like Zach Wilson. And one thing I want to see him more of, and I'm hoping I'll see it throughout the season as I get through his games. I want to see him drive the ball over the middle of the field. Mm-hmm. I see him go to his out routes, his hitches. He'll go deep, obviously, but rarely do you see him just put his foot into the ground and rip it in between the hashes. I think through 3 games, I saw it maybe 3 times, which if you're going to be successful in the league, you have to be able to make those throws. You can't be scared to go over the middle, over the linebackers. And we know he can do it. We know he can rip it. We know he can throw it with touch. And it's evident in his tape. But I just want to see a little bit more of it to know it's not like a thing here and there. I want to know that he can consistently do it if needed to.
Yeah, we lived that with Sam Darnold. I still remember his game against Minnesota in 2018, his rookie season. That's when I started to panic about him reading the middle of the field and throwing the middle of the field. He struggled to see underneath coverage and drive the ball between the hashes, and that was really part of his biggest failure in New York. So would like to see Zach Wilson get better in that area as well. So while Clay was only with us for half of it, that kind of wraps up the QB mock draft that we just kind of ran through. So how we want to finish is with some comments and questions from the guys listening and commenting in the chat. So we're going to get into some of those now. On the screen, hey guys, AVT and Caleb Fairley are there at 23. Who are you picking? Clay, I think I know what you're going to say.
AVT. I mean, it's no question. We already dug into that. He's my top choice at 23. I don't think he'll make it there. I think he'll go top 20. But I am praying, I am hoping that he can somehow sneak. If he wants to throw on a gas mask the day of the draft, by all means. I mean, I'll do whatever it takes to get Barrett Tucker in a New York Jet uniform.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I might not be quite as high on Vera Tucker as you are, but I think at 23, it's a no-brainer there. Fairly, you kind of talked me into the injuries. I think you're right. I think dealing with back injuries, I've kind of struggled with a couple myself, and they're difficult, and playing such a physically demanding position like corner. You have convinced me, so let's take AVT at pick number 23. So thanks for the question. Second one's coming in from Ironman 1999. Now, what happens to when Joe Brady makes Sam look like a good quarterback and then leaves for a head coaching job? Is Sam going to be okay? It's a serious issue around the NFL. It's why people are making these young offensive coaches head coaches earlier than they should be. If Sam has success in 2021 and Brady leaves, what impact do you think that'll have on Sam?
Well, let's just say if he has a good season in 2021, Joe Brady will be gone. Let's just put that out there. He will be gone. He will be scooped up by someone. That's if he wants to be, and I'm sure he wants to be. If that happens, I mean, it remains to be seen. We don't know who they're going to hire offensive coordinator. They still have the pieces around him personnel-wise to be successful. So I think he can be, but we don't know who they're going to hire offensive coordinator. Maybe they hire Dowell Loggins. Who knows? I mean, I don't think they'll go down that road, but it's possible that they pick a bad offensive coordinator. But I trust Matt Rule. I really do. That's why I wanted him as the Jets head coach. So I think if Darnold succeeds in this year, I think it'll be a continuous thing, whether Brady leaves or not.
Cool. I tend to agree. I think that the best coaches also have the offensive assistants in place to take over. They may not need to bring in someone out of building. So I think if Sam takes a leap in 2021, he'll be okay, even if and when Joe Brady leaves. Mm-hmm. Thanks to Iron Man for the question. We've got a couple more before we wrap up. Can Jenkins play inside as a rookie? Something that I'm a big fan on. Jenkins playing right guard in the phone booth and then kicking outside. We touched on it earlier, but I think you're thinking this is a pretty good idea, Clay.
Yeah, I think he can play there. He has the strength. We know he can. We know he has that. I like his anchor inside. Like you said, he can play in a phone booth at right guard or left guard, wherever they want to put him. So I think that's a good idea. And then maybe by 2022, maybe they want George Fant for all 3 years of his contract. So maybe in 2023, Tevin Jenkins kicks out to right tackle, and then he's set there. But I think in the short term, yes, I think he can play right guard for sure.
Yeah. Don't forget that Laramie Tunsil kicked inside for the Dolphins his rookie year. So there is kind of that pathway there and proof that it has been successful for rookie tackles kicking inside to guard. Last question before we wrap up on Play Like a Jet Live with uSTADIUM. Is Fields officially out of play? Why is he doing another pro day? I actually thought that to myself this morning. I knew it was coming, but when I read that he was going to throw a second time, I'm not sure if that was because of the scheduling with Alabama being on the same day, which we touched on last week being ridiculous. Do you think Fields is out of play? I know you said 90%. If you were the general manager, would Fields to Wilson be closer than that?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually do really like Fields. I think people are making a bigger deal out of his whole can't read. Can't go through past his first read. I think they're making a bigger deal than it is. I believe he can go past his first read. I've seen him do it. And honestly, his Clemson tape is the best tape I've ever watched from a quarterback prospect. It really is. So I think it's a lot closer than that. But just where all the signs are pointing, it just seems like Wilson is kind of written in concrete at this point. But for me, if I was the GM, no, Fields isn't officially out of play. And why is he doing another pro day? It's because San Fran couldn't watch it there. I think that's all it comes down to. San Fran couldn't make it there because they were going to Alabama, and they already had something set up to where Fields would throw for them another day. So I think that's the only reason why. Otherwise, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be happening.
Yeah, I agree. Fields looks to be out of play for the Jets. 90% sure that Zach Wilson's going to be the quarterback. Thanks to everyone for the questions. Make sure you keep posting in the comments throughout the show every week. We'll try and get back to them, circle around and answer some of your questions at the end. We made it, Clay. A couple of difficulties, little bit of audio issue, but we made it. The first Play Like a Jet Live in partnership with uSTADIUM. Again, want to say a big thank you to Nick, to Splash, who helped us figure out the issues that were going on your end today. Clay, awesome to speak to you again. We're going to do this every single week, 7 Eastern time. Have to think about that because it's Thursday morning here in Australia. 7 Eastern time on a Wednesday. We're going to be here with Play Like a Jet Live. Clay, man, have a good rest of your week, and love sitting down with you and talking as always.
Yeah, like you say, we're going to do this we're going to do this every Wednesday, and we only have two more until the draft. And I'm sure we're going to have something lined up for the draft as well. But yeah, it was awesome sitting down with you, and yeah, thanks again to Nick, Splash, and then Scott also for helping this all get set up.
Guys, thank you very much for listening and joining us on Play Like a Jet Live. We'll see you.